afternoon. This is Shawn O'Connor from Stratus Prep headquarters in New York City, and we are so excited to be here today with our good friends at B2GMAT to talk about 10 tips for admission into Stanford Graduate Business School, or Graduate School Business, I should say. Everybody knows Stanford is the toughest school in the country to get into, and I'm hoping today to give you 10 really critical tips that will help you put together that winning application that will give you one of the coveted slots in the Stanford incoming class. As you may know, Stanford takes just 7 or 8% of its applicants, but if you follow these step-by-step instructions and really put your best foot forward, we are confident that you can be in the lucky group that wins admission to Stanford this fall. So let's get started. For those of you who haven't seen one of my webinars before, my name is Shawn O'Connor. I am the founder and CEO of Stratus Prep. I have my JD and my MBA from Harvard. At Harvard, I did finish at the top 5% of my HBS class, making me a Baker Scholar. For undergrad, I went to Georgetown, where I was a summa cum laude graduate, and I have about 10 years of admissions and test prep experience. And before starting Stratus Prep, I worked with McKinsey & Company, Lehman Brothers. I'm also the author of the Forbes column, The Launching Pad. And you'll find two interesting things on The Launching Pad. On Tuesdays, I write about entrepreneurship and how entrepreneurship is really the way to revitalize the world economy. And then on Fridays, I write about MBA admissions. So this Friday, I will be writing about the new Harvard essay question and sort of what my thoughts are on what they're really looking for. So you may want to check that out on Forbes, The Launching Pad. If you like our Facebook page or connect with us on Twitter, you will get automatic links to those articles, making it easier for you to find them and reminding you each week about what the topic is. So that's a little bit about who I am, and I'm just thrilled to be here to share my expertise. You may know that Stratus Prep experts regularly contribute to Forbes. As I said, I have a weekly or bi-weekly column there. U.S. News, where I also have a weekly column. Business Week, Bloomberg, CNN Money, Fortune, where I have written a number of articles at Fortune's request about how to get bankers into HBS. And then the Financial Times, where I just wrote an article about how to network effectively in business school, because I think it's an area where business schools still have a good deal to learn. We serve clients from across many different industries at Stratus Prep, and of course, across the entire world. We have clients right now in over 40 countries. And you can see that we have clients from more traditional MBA feeder firms like McKinsey and Bain and Goldman and JP Morgan and BlackRock and Blackstone. But we also have a large number of clients coming from smaller companies, from tech companies like Google and Microsoft, from nonprofits like Teach for America. So sort of wherever you are on your journey to business school, Stratus Prep can really help to shape your application in a way that hopefully will be meaningful and successful. All right, so here we go. Tip number 1 for today's presentation on the 10 insider tips for admission into Stanford. Speak about how, as a Stanford student and beyond, you would change the world by doing well and doing good, or doing good and doing well. So what Stanford is really looking for, they're tired of the sort of social enterprise. I don't have any idea how I'll make money, but I want to run a big organization that's going to help people, because in today's recessionary environment or post-recessionary environment, that's really not a long-term viable strategy. A more viable strategy is to find a way to be a self-sustaining organization where you can change the world by both doing good for the world but also doing well. An example of that would be Apple, right? Apple has changed the way that we communicate, allows people from around the world to see one another just with a Wi-Fi connection through FaceTime. But it also has been an incredibly profitable company. Facebook allows us to connect with old friends while also selling very lucrative advertising. So Stanford really, more than any other business school, is looking for people that are cognizant of business models that would allow you to change the world by doing good and doing well at the same time. So this is really something that should be top of mind as you're putting together, especially your answer to question number 2. So we'll talk about the specific essay questions later in the presentation, but keep this in mind as you get to question number 2. All right, let's take a look at tip number 2. There are 2 key values at Stanford, and the first is innovation. And so you have to show that you have a commitment to innovation, and it can't be starting the day you apply to Stanford Business School. What you want to show is throughout your life, this can happen in question 1, it can happen in question 3, but throughout your life, and hopefully through your recommendations as well, you have been committed to innovating. You think about things your own way. You're willing to question paradigms and to question the status quo. So you want to show that you have a commitment to innovation, that innovation is a natural part of how you operate, of how you do business. And so this is critically important to demonstrate. If you're not innovative in your way of thinking, now that doesn't mean you have to be in, sort of technology, but if you're not an innovative thinker about how teams work or how people communicate or whatnot, you're unlikely to be a successful Stanford applicant. All right, so far we know we need to show how we're going to simultaneously do good and do well, and we need to demonstrate a lifelong commitment to innovation. Number 3, okay, and this is why Stanford asks for the peer recommendation. It's the only major school that does it. They want you to illustrate that you are committed to a collaborative learning experience. If Harvard is about leadership, Stanford is about collaboration. And so what you really need to demonstrate through your peer recommendation, your other recommendations, your essays, is that you recognize that more is learned through collaborative exercises than individual achievements. And that, you have to have a deep commitment to collaboration if you're going to be successful at Stanford. And since Stanford wants people who are going to be successful at the school, they really evaluate this as their second core value, innovation and collaboration. So we really need to be careful to demonstrate this, especially in question number 3. I really think that question number 3 is a place to demonstrate that you understand the Stanford values of innovation and collaboration, whereas question number 2 is the place where you understand that Stanford is looking for business models and business people who believe in doing good and doing well at the same time. All right, number 4. Spend the time working with an expert GMAT tutor to ensure the highest possible score. Now, I think the GMAT classes are a waste of time because in a GMAT class, you're going to have people at all different levels and they have to sort of superficially cover a lot of information. So really having an expert tutor is probably the most cost-efficient and time-efficient way to get the highest score possible. That high GMAT score will be incredibly valuable to you at certain schools like Wharton or Columbia or Duke or even Chicago. But that high GMAT score alone is not going to be enough for you to really pop from the Stanford cut. And so to pop from other Stanford applicants, you not only have to have a very high GMAT score, hopefully with a high quant score as well, but you have to demonstrate academic prowess in your undergraduate GPA. Stanford and Harvard are really the only 2 schools that are obsessed with undergraduate GPAs. They're really looking for they're really looking for ones who have a GPA of 3.7, 3.75 or higher. That's not to say you can't be admitted with a lower GPA, but unlike other schools where if you have a 750, they're fine with you having a 3.1 or a 3.3. At Harvard and Stanford especially, they believe that undergraduate GPA is an important indicator of your potential for success at Stanford. And so they're going to look at both your GMAT and your GPA, be cognizant of that, try to make up for any lost points in the GPA with a higher GMAT, but recognize that there's only a limited ability to do this because the GPA is, in and of itself, a really important factor. All right. Question number 5. Focus on the community's commitment to interdisciplinary learning. So at Stanford, they really want you to interact with the School of Engineering and the Faculty of Arts and Sciences and the other core parts of the university in order to foster learning in the most effective way possible. So you may work on a project with engineers who've developed an incredible technology but have not been able to commercialize that technology, and then you will bring your business expertise in order to help to commercialize that technology. So this is key, focusing on the university's commitment to interdisciplinary learning. Okay, so we're going to innovate, we're going to collaborate, we're going to demonstrate a commitment to interdisciplinary learning. Those are some of the key points of any successful Stanford application. Now, you also want to speak to how you hope to participate in Stanford's extensive global study programs. More and more, global study is important to business. Schools are recognizing this. Schools are developing global study programs. Stanford is no different, and they want to hear that you're excited to participate in these programs, because that demonstrates that you have a global perspective and that you recognize that the world cannot be governed just by doing business in the U.S. or Western Europe, but really we need to look with a global perspective, because what happens in China affects what happens in the U.S., affects what happens in India, affects what happens in Western Europe. And so seeing those synergies across the world is really, really essential. Now, number 7, demonstrate an entrepreneurial orientation. Obviously, Stanford is located, right near the heart of Silicon Valley. And so being more entrepreneurial, this sort of goes to their value of innovation, is going to be a net positive at Stanford. So you want to try to show this entrepreneurial orientation. Doesn't mean you need to start a company straight out of school. Maybe it means just considering working for a startup. Maybe it means doing something in the business plan competition. But you do want to demonstrate that you have original ideas that you're excited to share, typically through entrepreneurship. Okay. But at the same time, and sort of as a counterpoint to number 7, we have number 8. Don't make the mistake of seeing Stanford as just a pipeline to Silicon Valley. Stanford's not just about getting the latest job at Facebook or, Google or any of the other sort of key Silicon Valley companies. It also has an exceptional finance program. Many people go back to New York or go to San Francisco and work in finance. It has one of the best marketing programs. There are many marketers at General Mills and P&G who have gone to Stanford GSB. So don't make the mistake. If you're really interested in Stanford as a pipeline to Silicon Valley, it likely can be that for you. As we see by the number of Stanford MBAs who go into technology startups, but it's also a very growth in financing and marketing. And we should not make that mistake of not recognizing that, it also plays that important role. You want to show a passion for Stanford and the broader San Francisco community. This is especially important if you're going to be coming to the East Coast. Stanford really gets disturbed when people turn them down, right? It's a very small class, a very competitive pool, and so they really don't like being turned down. If you're from the East Coast or really any other part of the country other than the Bay Area or the West Coast, they may have concern as to whether or not you would actually accept their offer of admission. And because of that, you want to, through your application, demonstrate a particular passion for Stanford and the broader San Francisco community. So that's, absolutely essential here. And something that I really think many applicants that I work with at Stratus Prep make the mistake of not focusing on until, we go through the first or second draft and say, you haven't convinced me that you would actually come. And so this can be leveraged in the why Stanford part of question number 2, etc. Okay. Now let's talk about the essays. So Stanford requires 3 essays, as you likely know. And their essay questions have not changed at all since last year. The total number of words that you can use are 1,600 words, but you are allowed to divide those words into any, in any way across the 3 questions. They give you suggested limits of 750 words for essay 1, 450 words for essay 2, and 400 words for essay 3. So let's go a little bit deeper on each one of these essay questions. So essay question number 1, what matters to you most and why? Now, this is often called the crying question. If you don't get Stanford to really get teary-eyed by this question, it may not be enough to be successful. So you typically want to focus on an anecdote. Now, that anecdote may stand for or represent a general trait, but it alone, you need at least one anecdote, sometimes more than one anecdote, that, is going to illustrate your commitment to a certain idea or a certain trait. Next, you want to touch on the previous experiences that inspired this example, and you show results that you've achieved, but more importantly, how you achieve those results. So, people will talk about what's most important to them and why, and it might be something like curiosity, but you don't just then talk in all theoretical terms. You use at least one specific anecdote that you can focus on and demonstrate how curiosity is really important to you, or maybe it's family is really more important to you, and you want to focus on a specific anecdote about family and how previous experiences with your family inspired you, and what you've done to help life in your family. What should you not do in this essay? You should not spend any time, not a single word, proving or praising Stanford. You don't need to prove to them that that you love Stanford. It's not part of the question at all. This question is about you. You don't want to try to provide them 10 or 20 different things that are most important to you. You want to have one thing that's most important to you. And you don't want to regurgitate your resume, okay? You don't want to regurgitate your resume. That is probably the least effective strategy. So if you pick an esoteric concept like curiosity or family or love or happiness, make sure that you have specific anecdotes to back it up, or you can just choose a specific anecdote and then draw a conclusion from that anecdote. Be sure to show how previous experiences have led you to the present, and then show how you've achieved results, not just the results you have achieved. So what process do you go by to be successful? All right. Essay number 2 is a more standard question. Essay number 1 is a Stanford unique question. It has been on the application for as long as I can remember, and I've been doing this for 10 years now. And so, essay number 2 is, what do you want to do? So short and longer term post-MBA goals, and why Stanford? Okay, how can Stanford fit into that? So, this question requires self-awareness. It also requires you to be honest about the specific actions that you could have undertaken to do even better, and that you now want to undertake to do better. And then illustrate how you have applied the lessons you learned to your past in order to reach your goals in your future. You should not overemphasize, obviously, any sort of failure, or be afraid to honestly answer the question. So the key here is coming up with something really unique that you want to do. Just saying like strategy consulting or investment banking, that's going to be absolutely insufficient. It will not be admitted. It's too generic. So, if it's investment banking, if you should say something like, I want to leverage my understanding of finance, my Spanish and Portuguese language skills, and my love of Latino culture in order to move to Sao Paulo and work as an investment banker with one of the leading domestic or international firms. So you can tell that you want to be an investment banker, but you have to do it in a way that is, that is pretty powerful. You can also say that, that you will use the Stanford resources like the Center for Social Innovation and Startup Garage in order to help realize this vision. But they really want to understand, what are you going to do the day you graduate from Stanford? Where do you envision your career being 10 years down the line? And then at the end of your career, where do you envision being? And they want to be convinced about Stanford. So they want to understand, what programs have you discovered? Who have you talked to? What have you done to establish that Stanford is really the best place to receive this type of education? So you definitely want to talk to Stanford students, current students and alumni, and ask them about existing programs and what was missing, and then fit those programs to what you are hoping to study at Stanford and what you're hoping to work in after Stanford. Also, in this Why Stanford section, you want to talk a little bit about the collaborative and innovative community and the opportunity to work closely with others, because that is something that is very important to Stanford as well. You'll also want to mention here the key themes that we talked about earlier of innovation. Now, essay number 3, you have a choice of 3 different prompts. And so these questions are also testing self-awareness. They're testing team-building skills. They're testing persuasion. They're testing innovation and creative thinking. So you want to be honest about the specific actions that you've taken, and in order to be as successful as possible. Okay, you've obviously been very successful, but what specific steps have you taken and will you be taking to be successful in business school and beyond? Some of the times there could be a tendency, especially in one of the questions, to emphasize a failure. You don't want to do that. If you do one about sort of a breakdown of team dynamics, you don't want to take all of the breakdown on your own shoulders, and you want to not be afraid to answer honestly. They really want to hear about a time, whether in work, usually this is a work example, or in your personal life somehow, or in college, you changed the opinion of a group, right? Or you moved from, one venue to another, or whatever the case may be. So don't be afraid to be honest here. In general, in the Stanford essay, authenticity and honesty will carry you a long way. So it's something that we really emphasize. All right, some of you may have seen this before. This is how we teachers going about not only writing the Stanford essays, but writing every essay that we work with our clients on here at Stratus Prep. First, you have the core personality, and then the strengths and achievements and the career goals. So you first brainstorm. Okay, you want to become introspective. So what are the core facets of your personality? What are your strengths and achievements? What career goals do you have? Then you take those to develop a personal story. Where have you been? That's your chronological history. Why an MBA? Why now? That's your present. And then what do you want to do in the future? And that sort of ties to the idea of your key themes. Okay? You want to emphasize the key themes here so that, and you may want to do it in essay question number 1 as well, but so that the reader can see that, you are with, you have a certain path to take, and, you're ready for an MBA. Okay? And then after the MBA, you have a clear goal set for you. Outlining the essays. So we need to customize the essays to each and every school, because what Stanford is looking for, innovation and collaboration, is different from what Harvard is looking for, which is global leadership, entrepreneurship, which is different from what Wharton is looking for, which is analytical problem solving and taking theoretical knowledge and putting it into the practical. Next, when it comes down to sitting down to write, you need to find your own voice, okay? And then you need to use all of the work that we've come up with so far, and the outlining being foremost among these. So you need to use all of this information in order to write the most effective essay and the most authentic essay. Then we come to editing and revising. So first, you want to edit for content, And then you want to, edit after you edit for content. Then you want to edit for length and word count and style and diction, etc. And don't over edit. And if you're working with someone like Stratus Prep, make sure that they don't over edit. We're very careful about not over editing our clients' essays and having it lose their authentic voice, which is really, really critical to your success. So editing and revising, do not over edit. Do not let 20 people edit your essay and really make it quite different from what it really was, and make it sound a lot more generic and less from the heart. All right. So what about Stratus Prep? How do we sort of stack up, and why might you want to work with us? Well, we do have a 40% lifetime success rate at Stanford, and that goes back to 2006 when we were founded. And so that 40% acceptance rate may not seem very high to you right off the bat, but that is 5 times higher than the regular 7 to 8% chance of admission. We have an 80% success rate at Wharton, 60% at Harvard Business School. We also have helped our clients raise millions of dollars in unsolicited financial aid. And I'm going to show you some success stories on the pages that follow, so that you can be really clear on, where the money is coming from and where the money is going. Okay, so with financial aid, it's really important to understand that. Next, I'm going to show you some success stories as well, so you can get a better sense of our track record. What's our secret? So the way that we're able to obtain these results is, unlike so many firms, which are what I call a matchmaker firm, they just connect you to a counselor. And when we connect you to that counselor, it's all the best, right? I don't believe in that. As the founder and CEO of Stratus Prep since 2006, I have personally been involved with every essay that goes out the door. And so what I do is I serve as the objective evaluator. So when you come up with those templates, those strategy templates, the key strategic ideas that are going to be in your essays, you want to have those evaluated by somebody other than just your counselor who might have suggested them. And so that's what my job will be. So we'll go through all of your slides, your recommendations, and I'll suggest you use there. We'll go through, your brainstorming exercise, and we'll figure out from all of these, what is really most important and how can we think of things in a really unique way. So that benefit of having 2 of us working with you constantly is extremely important. A third thing to note is that we have implemented a couple of changes this year that make our first class dining experience even better. And so, what we have added is now your essay gets served to a third-party reader at the end of the process. So once you and your counselor have gone back on content and structure and flow, then it goes to an objective reader. And that objective reader is a third-party senior admissions counselor from Stanford who will read your essay and give feedback on, what's working, what's not working, what we might want to do to make it even stronger. Okay? And even though all of our counselors have attended different schools, we track their success rate at each school. And I will tell you, it is not Stanford alum who actually have the highest success rate at Stanford. It's people who can tell a good story. It's people who can encourage their clients to be emotional. It's counselors who convince their clients to really give a true example in number 3 rather than something that just sort of sounds easy or safe. You never want to play it safe at Stanford, given how hard it is to get in. And then through your experience and connection to the schools, we can advise you on what you're looking for. So here are some success stories that might be interesting. So these aren't Stanford success stories specifically, but I'll speak to some of those in a moment. So we have Rob. He went to a top 25 undergraduate business school, and he had a 3.7 and a 700. He was admitted to Wharton, which is a pretty low GMAT to get into Wharton, especially since they really, really want to see a quant of 50 or higher. Vinay comes to us from India. He had a 3.3 converted and a 7.10 as his GMAT result. He was also admitted to Wharton and was given a half scholarship. Okay. So that saves him about $75,000 for 2 years. Next, Alex went to a top 10 undergrad program. Okay, a bigger program that you would probably all be familiar with. He had a 680 on his GMAT and a 3.0, but he was still admitted to Wharton again. You see there with a half scholarship. And then Jennifer had only a 2.7, but she had, she had a 2.7 from a top 25 Ivy League school. And she had 700 on the GMAT, and she was admitted to Wharton as well. So, these may seem like out of the ordinary examples, or why did you give us the Wharton examples? But what works in Wharton will certainly work in Stanford, because in Wharton you are sort of encouraged to try to figure out problems on your own. At Stanford, with the collaborative community, you can count on the fact that if you have a flat or if you have some type of problem with your car, that people will be there to assist you and to help. All right. So next step. So what should you be doing now if you really want to get into Stanford in round one? Well, first, if you haven't taken the GMAT yet, you need to find a qualified tutor to help you prepare. Second, you have to develop distinctive Stanford admissions essays. Okay? There are 3 essays. They are unique to the world. No other school has them, and so you're not going to be able to piggyback off of work you've done on other schools. You also have to contact potential recommenders, but I would hold off until the middle to end of July, because I usually want to give people about 6 weeks. Any more than that, they get lost, and they certainly can take care of these in 6 weeks. And then finally, review your resume to see if there are any gaps that can be filled in. So especially if you're applying next year, if you were to take on a full year's extracurricular activities, that would look pretty meaningful. Whereas if you join just before you apply, obviously that looks like a farce. And then finally, I think now is really the time to decide if you're going to be guided by an admissions counselor. And the reason that that's the case is that many folks, think, oh, an admissions counselor, that's just somebody who edits my essays. Well, no, being an admissions counselor is way more strategic. So it's about thinking about what Stanford wants, what you have in your background, and then how you can communicate what you want to do in an effective narrative. So we're really strategists, and we are branding you in the same way that Cheerios is branded by General Mills. All right. So let me give you some final takeaways. So in short, recognize the difficulty of getting into Stanford this year. It's tough every year, but the number of international applicants and acceptances are increasing, making it slightly more difficult for Americans to get into today. Number 2, be prepared by budgeting enough time. Okay. To come up with a really, really good application for round 1, you really want to be applying now at the latest. I mean, we've had some people who have already made their purchases, but at the latest, you should be doing that this month, because we only have, July, August, and September. So we would be hopeful that some of you will decide to join us at Stratus Prep and the Stratus Prep family. But if you do, remember to try to sign up before Wednesday to get, not this Wednesday, but next Wednesday, to get the special discount. All right. So we are offering 2 discounts tonight. First, 10% off if you off GMAT prep and or admissions, and if you buy both, we'll give you another 5% off, to see how does one scale this system. Okay, what are the opportunities for scalability? And then number two here is that you have a 20% discount if you call and enroll by July 3rd. So a 10% discount off of GMAT prep and admissions counseling anytime through July 19th. Okay? And you can sign up for that online using the code DTG. Okay, DTG. The other option is to take the 20% discount. And with the 20% discount, you have to enroll by tomorrow evening at 7 p.m. So if you're pretty much ready to go and ready to work with us, you can gain an extra 10% off. Otherwise, you will be on the 15% off plan, which is still, quite nice. And basically, you want to keep our shoes separate here because, they're going to come and hang us, and that's how we're going to, determine the winner of this important competition. So you really want to become a part of the Stanford community and really relate to them. If you'd like a free consultation about how we might be able to help you, if you're not sure how many schools you want on the MBA side, or you're not sure whether a lot of admissions counseling is going to be helpful or not, we can certainly assist with that. Just set up a consultation with me at consult@stratusprep.com. Okay, consult@stratusprep.com. Or you can go ahead and give us a call anytime at 212-307-1788. 212-307-1788. Okay, great. Well, I hope this webinar has been helpful in getting your juices flowing about how to think about the Stanford application this year. And now I'll be really happy to take your questions. All right, let's see what we have here. So someone asked here, if you are applying as a college senior, what would be most important other than your GPA and your GMAT? That's a great question. So Stanford, a couple of years ago, in response to the Harvard 2+2 program, began admitting some people straight through from undergrad, but more commonly putting them in what's called the 1-3 program, where you take 1 to 3 years of nonprofit work or something like that in order to then be best prepared for law school. Now, I've seen some people study for this just by reading a lot, and that has worked for them. Some people make flashcards with the 1,000 or so most common words on the exam. That's probably what I do. But there's no right answer. It's really just about being honest about who you are and where you are looking to go in your life and how Stanford fits into that. So what they will look for to sort of finalize your question is they will look at your leadership activities. So they have your GPA, they have your GMAT, and so they will want to look at you. They will be admitted through the Deferred Action Program at Stanford. You have to be a really, really standout candidate, and so what they will be looking for is people who who have scored very well, who have good jobs, who've been well compensated, so that they have that extra oomph in terms of the power of their brand, right? They don't want to let in someone who's going to be subpar because that would speak poorly of the school. All right, here we go. Is it better to apply in round 1 compared to round 2? What if you think you can accomplish something in the extra 2 months, and round 2 gives you let me just see here. Okay, gives you, and mention it in your essay. Should you go for round 2? In that case, despite knowing that it's more competitive. I would absolutely not do that. Round 1 is the only way to go at Stanford. And in fact, Stanford on its website says, if you choose not to apply in round 1, that is a severe indication to us that you don't really want to attend that school. Okay? So Stanford, probably more than any other school, is really, really particular about, they are really particular about U.S. examples. Okay? All right, great. Let's see what else we have. How many hours do you suggest we purchase for essay review? How much do your services cost? Well, that's a great question. So we do an hourly rate, but I don't really recommend that because if you do the hourly rate, you can end up paying the same cost as the package rate without getting nearly as much service. So for essay review, we charge for the hours. A Stanford essay review would probably take about 2 hours because there are 3 questions and it's rather long. If you end up needing that over the weekend, just let me know. Give me a call, and Sophie will be in the office, but give me a call or shoot me an email, and we can discuss how to best position yourself because, the schools here are really excited about the remarkable improvement that there has been in terms of the quality of the students. Not that there ever weren't great students, but the quality of the students. So what we like to do is, rather than do an essay review, so my hourly rate is $500, my colleagues' hourly rates are $250. If you do hourly, it's going to be somewhere between $500 and $1,000 for one review, but we may have significant changes that we want you to make, which may necessitate a second review, which gets you up to $2,500. Now, if you sign up with the 20% off, it's, I think, $2,060. So you're paying the difference for 2 photos between, $200 and $266. And obviously, it's advantageous to, as you get older, you want to start setting up trust for your children, your children's children, so that those folks will have money, because you obviously can't take the money with you when you unfortunately do meet your final demise. Okay. Let's see what else we have here. How important are the recommendations? Stanford asks for the recommendation letters from a direct supervisor, but how punitive would it be if the supervisor will not give a recommendation? Well, that is a little bit problematic. I mean, I would first have to understand, why are they not giving you a recommendation? Is it that you don't want to tell them? Stanford's not going to be too receptive to that excuse, like, oh, I don't want to tell them because I don't want to risk my promotion or my bonus. Well, your current employer is your past, not your future. And while you don't want to offend them, it's totally acceptable in almost every professional context for you to resign one day and then have to find a replacement the next day. It's very, very homogeneous. Okay. So that's something that I think is really important. All right, let's see what else we have here. And we got that one. How do you compensate if your undergrad GPA is not high? Will experience outweigh this shortcoming? I think that it makes sense to apply in round 1, even with a lower GPA, if you have a competitive GMAT and a good story. And we have had people like that every once in a while get in, but it is pretty rare that it happens. But it is a good idea to have, because obviously appreciation and inflation there have been much stronger than in the U.S., which drive higher bank rates, which drive, more income coming to the people, which is sort of what governance is all about. Let's see here. How important is a socioeconomic background for Stanford? Not terribly. I mean, you have plenty of people who go in as English majors or public relations majors or government majors who didn't have robust social sciences background. I think their feeling is that as long as you meet basic math minimums, that they will teach you everything you need to know. Okay. Got that one. How soon does Stratus accept? How soon does Stanford accept the application? What is your recommended timeline for the application? So we like you to apply at least 2 weeks before the deadline. So, it's not possible to apply. I don't think they've opened the online submissions yet. You can apply as early as you want, as early as they allow you to apply, but you should definitely apply at least by 2 weeks before the deadline. You don't want to be hitting send at the last minute there. How much does age matter at Stanford? Because average age is quite low, and international students apply later, like 28 to 30 or 31. Well, it is true that for many students at Stanford, they are looking for younger students, so like 24 to 26, 2 to 4 years of work experience. But we have seen older applicants get in. And if you are, looking for an older applicant, or you are an older applicant and you're looking to go to Stanford, if you can make a good case for why you need an MBA now, particularly as an international student where later MBAs are much more common, you may be successful in getting later, but we suggest not taking the risk because it is pretty important to get in relatively early. Your chances are significantly higher. Okay, let's see what else we have. Are there differences between Harvard's 2+2 program and Stanford's deferred admissions program? Yeah, some very minor cosmetic differences. So Harvard's 2+2 program, you have to come out, work for 2 years, and then you are guaranteed the 2 years at Harvard. Stanford's deferred admission program gives you 6 years to sort of, meet your demise before they expect you to come to work. It is true that age is important for Stanford, but only mildly so. If you can make the argument about, why you really need to be there, you'll be fine. So between the 2+2 program and the deferred admission program, just to sort of loop back on that, in the 2+2, it's 2 years of work plus 2 years of Harvard. In deferred admission, it's either 1 year of work and then 2 years of Stanford, 2 years of work and then 2 years of Stanford, or 3 years of work and then 2 years of Stanford. We don't recommend, 2 years of Stanford. We don't recommend doing the 3 and 2 program because it just then gets too long. So I would either do 1 year and then your next year at Stanford, or 2 years and then your next 2 years at Stanford. What services do you provide in free consultation? Any one-on-one chat or audio discussion with a counselor? So I conduct all of the consultations myself. And during the consultations, what we do is we're not going to solve all of your admissions problems in 30 minutes, right? So what we do is talk about how Stratus Prep could help you. And we sort of, outline what you are looking for in order to be most successful. And so that's sort of how we work those is, the point of the consultation is to learn more about Stratus Prep and how we work, and specifically, what you would be, entitled to if you did sign up. But I'm happy to answer any short admissions questions you have. Just don't expect me to be able to go deeply into your profile or read essays or anything like that because time just does not allow for that. The vast majority of people who do free consultations want to have a little bit further conversation with me, and then they decide to go ahead and sign up. And you can always talk to one of our counselors in addition to talking to me if you'd like. All right. I don't know if there are any more questions. I think we got through a lot of questions there, which was great. Oh, here comes one more. What would you recommend going about? What would you recommend going about talking to current Stanford students and visiting Stanford alumni? And is it important to schedule a visit to campus? Well, it's always great for every school to talk to current students and alumni, especially recent alumni, because they can tell you about what's going on at the programs, what's really most important at the programs, where the emphasis of the school is at the moment. And doing a campus visit is great. Now, you won't be able to do a campus visit this year before the round one deadline because they just preserve the back until then. Now, part of the reason for that might be that by talking to current students and alumni, you can mention sort of like particularly dynamic clubs and things like that. When you schedule a visit, you'd love to see a class, although before the round one deadline, as I just mentioned, that's not possible because Stanford sort of closes its campus to outside class visitors until after the end of September. But, you can go to the info session, you can get a feeling of the school. I always prefer to go better in the school year when you can get a vibe of the other students. Because if the other students don't really jive with you, then that may not be the right school for you. It might just have like the wrong two-way radio, one that you wouldn't understand or find particularly compelling. Do they start reviewing applications before the round one deadline closes? No, typically not. Typically they view the whole batch together. It's just that by applying early, you sort of demonstrate that, it was really important to you to go to Stanford, and you demonstrate early that, this was a priority for you. All right, great. Well, thank you so much for attending the Beat the GMAT Stratus Prep 10 critical admission tips for Stanford Business School. We really enjoyed having you on the program today. And hopefully we'll have the chance to talk to many more of you in individual consultations or as clients working with us on your Stanford and Harvard and Wharton applications. So again, this is Shawn O'Connor from Stratus Prep headquarters in New York City. Thank you so much and have a good day.